Thank you, Dr. Neelam Pandey, for the kind introduction, but this elaborate one, not necessary, just a short one because you mentioned it. Anyway, thank you very much. And my appreciation and thanks to the Department of Political Science and Public Administration of the Annam University, my alma mater, and particularly to Dr. C. Subramanian for the invitation. It's good to be with you all after quite some time. The topic for today, which is given to me, is the Indo-Pacific geopolitics. The Indo-Pacific geopolitics, what we mean by Indo-Pacific. So that from the terminology, from the area, if you have to understand, we generally use a geographical area to denote or to identify particular region, which is being brought out by the UN administrations from 1950s and 60s, which they started categorizing for their own internal purpose for the state of the State Department or for the defense, the Pentagon. They started saying that this region is South Asia and this particularly Southeast Asia, and which the middle we call West Asia, they call Middle East. So these geographical terms started emerging from the US perspective, which everyone started accepting it. What we call Asia and Pacific, that is from the Asian continent and the Pacific with the Alaska border in the US, which is being called as Asia Pacific earlier in terms of continent. Now in terms of maritime, we changed it into Indo-Pacific, that is of two oceans. Instead of continent, we are now talking about two oceans, that is Indian Ocean and then the West Pacific. So when we merge together, the concept called Indo-Pacific has started. But is it a new one? In 1930s itself, the German scholar, the Karl Haushofer, has introduced this the terminology Indo-Pacific. He used it, but not that popular. In the Indian context, the Kalidas Nag, Bengali writer, has used this particular terminology Indo-Pacific in his writing in 1941. But however, this terminology did not pick up by importance because it was limited to certain audience and certain which was not reached to wider population. So when this became a wider one is last 1 decade or 2 decades, we can say maximum. So this Indo-Pacific the concept or terminology started rising with the changing equation, power equation in the region. And how it started is the China's rise. China says themselves it's a peaceful rise, but is it a peaceful rise? Does China the rise of China doesn't alter the equation among the powers? Also, the China doesn't threatens the neighbors who, instead of considering it as a peaceful, considering it as a more aggressive and trying to grab their territory or threatening their existence. So this China factor is an important one which gave rise to the prominence of the concept Indo-Pacific. And if you see particularly the theater of conflict, what we call where the conflict is been happening in the Indo-Pacific, in the Middle East or the West Asia, we used to see the conflicts, but it is more within the Arab countries with the proxies of the Soviet Union or the US. They try to have a geopolitical competition, a challenge to become a superpower. Sorry, not superpower. It's become the regional power in the. But in the China's rise in the East has altered, which I've been saying altered. It's because in South China Sea, from the 1947 onward, they themselves imposed a 9-dash line, saying that certain areas which is been historically or even in the modern international law, there are special economic zones, the inland water territories of countries is being overlapped by the claim of China. China says the 70 to 80% of the South China Sea belongs to them. And in the East China Sea, the Senkaku Island, where it's between the Japan and China, the Chinese claim that they also belong to them. And if you see the India-China border, after the Tibet was annexed by them, they also claim Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh, certain parts in the Sikkim near the Nadula Pass. Also now we have seen the face-off in the Ladakh, in the Galvan Valley. So the entire stretch of the western to the eastern sector of the India's border with China, China claims certain areas saying that it's part of the southern Tibet. And China's argument is that historically it all they claim the territory from the Ming dynasty, saying that this once was ruled and then it was under the administration or at least the tax collection done by the Chinese. So now the Chinese has a right to claim it. But historically, after 100 years or 200 years or 500 years, can we go and say that, for example, India has some influence in the middle, in the Southeast Asia or any country? Can they claim saying that today this part belongs to us? But Chinese does, doing it deliberately. So this has given rise to a threat of conflict, and this conflict brought the China's rise with the technological, military, economy, and its aggressive posture directly in confrontation with the world superpower, that is the United States of America, as well as the other regional powers like India. And though all the parties are not interested in having any conflict because it is going to impact both the sides, but unfortunately, they have to deal with the China economically, militarily also. All the countries are dependent on the import and exports, the material, raw material from China. China is today the number one supplier of all the toys, all the LED batteries, hybrid cars, all the high, what you call the rare earth materials comes from China. Anything you name, you can see Chinese name there. So why people of all the countries are buying is it is affordable. The Chinese products are affordable when compared to the US or with the other one. So it's not due to the love they go for China. It is because of the affordability which Chinese have made it as innovation to reach to the population to the world through using the technology and make it affordable so that people, when you buy, the Chinese name come to them. So Chinese wants to be in the minds of each and everyone, one side. It's a soft power diplomacy. But at the same time, they're also trying to be aggressive towards the state to say that only for people they want to be in mind, but for the state they're saying that this part is ours. I'm the boss in this region. Listen to me. If you don't listen, if you mess up with me, you're going to face the consequence. So that this complicating message they send it in 2 or 3 ways has become an issue here. And what the particular literals are, literals what you mean is the states in the Southeast Asia or East Asia, starting from the Indo-Pacific. So to clarify it, the Indo-Pacific concept is, as I said, Indian Ocean as well as the West Pacific. So it starts from the coast of Africa and goes up to Fiji or the Alaska in the US. But the most of the conflict which is happening is from the India towards the Fiji or the Australia, Japan. So it is east of India where the conflicts are more, which is being worrying the countries. Also, the scholars are more focused on this, particularly because of the what I'm explaining. Another important point to note is that these countries, or literals, what we say, are not equipped, whether militarily or technologically, economically, to counter China alone. So what they're doing is they're trying to alter their equation by aligning with certain powers. US as a dominant power was the guarantee for the security and stability of the region. But in between, the US has started focusing on Middle East, Afghanistan after the Cold War, and during the Cold War, they're interested in focusing on the Soviet. So because of this US diversifying their focus and interest, this region was not much under the US influence, except that there are some fleets are there, US presence are there, US allies are there. So China has utilized it. And when the President Donald Trump came to power and started looking inward, that America first, then he also came out of the Trans Partnership Treaty and others, TPP and others. So what the countries felt is that we cannot depend on the US. US is not committed to protect us if there's any eventuality, any conflict with China. What we need to do is we have to develop our own alliance system. So for example, Japan or the Philippines, the Australia, who are the traditional partners of the US, started moving towards their own alliance system. Australia and Japan have eagerly, in 10 years back itself, they stated that they are very much interested in tying up with India. And gradually, Japan has gone ahead, and we have seen the Prime Minister, the Shinzo Abe, when he came to the India. He and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in the meeting, he said it's a confluence of two seas. That means that bringing the West Pacific to the Indian Ocean, and then they having that partnership. And then later it was said they are the indispensable, the national partners. So Japan has scaled up its activities, scaled up its partnership, which we call strategic partnership between India. Australia wants to do it. Australia has brought out the white paper in 2009. It clearly says they're very much interested with the partnering with India. But however, they're still with the US alliance. But they're trying to work out with Vietnam. Vietnam was with the China earlier in the because of the war with the US. Gradually now the Vietnam is more autonomy in the sense the foreign policy is strategic autonomy they have. They're trying to orient with India. So all the countries are trying to form because the US commitment there have been uncertainty. They are not having a confidence that US will protect them with their territoriality. So this is the context of it. And the next question, if you ask, does it important to take note of it? Yes, because the South China Sea, what is happening is not only confined to it. And what is happening in the China Sea is not only confined to Japan and the China. It has a broader connotation. Reason is the trade which is happening in the Indo-Pacific or Indian Ocean, what we call initially, is a critical waterway where all the shipping, the trade has been happening through the maritime. So it's a critical waterway. And second, the 70 to 80% of the maritime trade happens through it. And we have important choke points like Strait of Malacca, Lombok Strait. So if there is any blockade by China, particular the strait or capturing of it, it's going to seriously affect the trade route and sea lane of communication. All the countries, including India, has been advocating that we need to have freedom of navigation, protection of the sea lanes of communications. So like this all guaranteed by the international law and has been agreed in the United Nations. But China has a potential today to alter it. And China is aiming to do it, but because of the reactions, they've been stopped. That's why the term called Malacca diorama, which you have heard, because China's population needs the energy to fuel the growth. So they have been from left and right, from the Latin America to all the islands in the South China Sea and East China Sea. They're trying to explore oil, gas, as well as they want to bring the trade to the mainland through all the region, not only on the South China Sea. So they need these choke points under their control, or at least they don't want the US to dominate. On the other side, US and other powers doesn't want the US to, the China to dominate and control these choke points. Indonesia and Malaysia Singapore came together and said they are the owners of the Malacca Strait, so they will try to control. But unfortunately, in the South China Sea issue or in the Southeast Asia, the ASEAN is divided. ASEAN is divided because Cambodia, Laos, or a proxy like to China. They are the supporters of China. And today, even Philippines, who has filed a case in the International Court of Justice, arbitration went and the award was given to the Philippines. But today, still they are, instead of going against China and forcing China to accept, because China said they will not respect the ruling and they don't bother about it. They don't have any option. They're now having a close relation with the China. The Philippines president himself have accepted the Chinese aid and projects in Philippines, and he's been silent when the China in March and April, when China has announced unilaterally that 2 districts in the water belong to them. The Philippines' response was quiet because the reason is ASEAN is divided. ASEAN centrality is in question. ASEAN in economically are performing well, but on political, geopolitical issue coming together, especially against China, it's difficult for them given the variation of the national interest and then the alliance which they have. And then the next important point to note is the Korean Peninsula and Indo-Pacific. Korean Peninsula is getting the murkier or dirty or getting the highlight is because of the Kim Song-hun, who's the chairman of the DPRK, that North Korea, and he doesn't bother about anything. His survival, the regime survival, the country survival is important for him. And he is also one of the proxies, the North Korea is proxy of the China. What China cannot do directly, sometimes it does through the proxies, whether it is Pakistan here or the North Korea or sometimes with the Laos, Cambodia, the message has been sent through them. So the North Korea is being used to irritate the US as well as to pose threat to them and to their allies who are the Japanese and South Korea. So the Korean Peninsula again brought the importance of the Indo-Pacific, where the countries need to focus to resolve it. As I said again, the US, the President Barack Obama has brought a term called the US pivot towards Asia. That means from Afghanistan and Middle East, they now will focus on the Asia, but it is being completely diluted by the President Donald Trump. And as I said, the loss of confidence even within the US allies, whether South Korea, Japan, they're trying to have their own internal system of collaborating with countries like India. And India became because India is one of the regional power, and even if it is not matching the, but in terms of the and India are around 6%. So they have a confidence that India can build up with the resources, human resources, the economic growth, as well as the technology. Slowly, we have been upgrading our the naval system, the military equipment. So they have a belief that India can be one of the regional security provider in the region. So tying up it will be interesting, or it could be beneficial for us like that. But question is whether really India is going to shoulder the responsibility of being the regional security provider. It's important to understand, which will come back later. The cause of concern immediately is that China's bullying activities, and whether it is COVID or pro-COVID, they doesn't bother. They waters near the Malacca have a oil exploration drilling is going on, and the oil drilling is happening within the waters, but it's been done by the Petronas, the Malaysian agency. But China has brought their oceanographic vessel, that is ship, stopped close to it for 2 days. It was intimating to the Malaysians that, see, this is also part of us, according to the 9-9, the area which we claim. So, though you claim this is the economic zone of you, we doesn't bother about it. So, in the intimation to threat the Malaysian, they kept the vessel for 2 days. Second, as I said, 2 districts of the waters in the Philippines, West Philippines, the China has immediately declared that it's part of them. No word from the Philippines. Indonesia, and then with the Vietnam, when the local fishermen go out for fishing in South China Sea, constantly they have been coming under the threat, intimidation, and sometimes the firing from the Chinese. The sinking of Vietnam fishing vessels in the April, where the Vietnam opposed and then also bilaterally protested and also taken to UN. But nothing has happened. So this is, and with China central group, the Chinese ship has trespassed the Japanese water, and they have gone without, even with the alert and the warning from the Japanese, they don't bother setting down. So these are the issues highlight the Chinese are trying to be aggressive as much as possible, not compassionate, not bothered about the concern of the others. They want their own. So the power projection is important for them. They doesn't bother whether India, Vietnam, or Malaysia, any countries, because they find these are the small fishes they can easily take away. They're only the challenge or the aim is to target the US. Because if you see the dynamics which is happening, we know that United States of America, US is the dominant superpower in the world, which China also recognizes. But what China is saying, you are a global superpower, but for the Indo-Pacific, I am the superpower. You are second to me. So please understand that even if you come through this way, I'm the boss. So Indo-Pacific, they want to be a superpower. Remaining area, US can be a superpower. So they have this clear strategic notion among the think tanks or thinking process, strategic process. And with this, they're trying to project the power. But when the countries are feeling the heat of China and trying to talk against China, the public opinion, what the Chinese are doing, they also started adapting the aid diplomacy. In a sense, for example, in the Sri Lanka or Myanmar, any country in the region needs to develop, because you need a development infrastructure, good infrastructure for the development of the country. Who can fund it? World Bank can fund it, Asian Development Bank fund it, but how much they can fund it, and what is the terms and conditions? US doesn't fund much. US aid, Australian aid, this all used to be there in the Cold War, but now they have been reduced. So what China has done is, China has scaled up, has increased the aid to all the country. Whoever wants money for building a road, a port, or any airport, any infrastructure, what they have to do is, they have to just call China, give an invitation saying that I am so and so interested. I want to do a project. I need a money. China doesn't bother about human rights violation, whether country is undergoing any conflict. Is there a human rights violation? Is there which regime is in power? What they will say, how much money you want, we will give you. But the project will be done only by us. We will bring our company, Chinese company, to do the project. Men and material also will come from us. We will do it. And what the beauty of Chinese is that if they say within 3 years they will deliver the project. Unfortunately for India, when we do the project in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, if we say 5 years, till 12 years, we not completed. So that's unfortunate. That's why they prefer India like country, but we don't have that, what you call, the construction or the project commitment in the blood. So Chinese does that because the reason is in democracy system, when you have multiple agency and there's lack of coordination, financial hurdle from Ministry of Finance, we don't deliver much. But Chinese is one. If a top boss says it has to be done, it will be done. No question at all. No one can rise. No court can interfere. So Chinese are good in completing the projects within the stipulated time. So that is also attraction to all the smaller countries. That's why countries like Maldives, China, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Myanmar, Cambodia, any country you name, all the infrastructure, they will invite Chinese. Chinese fund them through Exim Bank of the Chinese or through some holdings which are based in Shanghai or Hong Kong, private or the public one. The funding will go to them. Men and material will go. For example, in Hambantota project, the some report says 2,500 Chinese were there in Sri Lanka building the ports and then road infrastructure. Men and material, the material came in a ship from the China. And the beauty, if you see that in the Bandaranaike Center for International Studies in Colombo, which was a donation by the Chinese to the Sri Lankan, where the Sri Lankan foreign policy think tank is established. Still today, the crane, the what we call the lift elevator, which is operated is by the Chinese men, not by the local Sri Lankan. 25 years over. The question is, cannot the local Sri Lankan operate the elevator or lift? It's only the Chinese need, because part of the agreement, there needs to be, for example, 99-year lease or 5 years lease or 50 years lease. They'll keep a person. That person can be a surveillance. That's why India doesn't go with the Chinese on any project. We like to have Japanese, Korean, but we don't allow Chinese because when they bring the men and material, we don't know whether they have surveillance system. The people or is the material can have a camera or people can monitor who's going, who's coming in this building, what the discussion. So that surveillance can have an impact. So we don't go with that. But other countries, because the easy money, immediately they get it without any question. Two, with the stimulated time period, the Chinese will complete the project. Three, operation, then locals no need to worry. In the contract period, they will operate also. And then when it gets beneficial, the Chinese will transport. This attracts. And the aid diplomacy of the Chinese wants to mitigate, want to reduce the anti-China impact. So one way they're pushing the aggressive. Second, the alternative side, they are giving the aid to the countries not to bring them close. And you may not aware of it. In Myanmar, when the Aung San Suu Party came, National League Democracy came to power in Myanmar after 2015, till that military rule was there. The Chinese had a contract with the, or the agreement with the military juntas, that is military rulers, Thein Sein government and others, of having Midstone Dam and then the hydropower project, etc. When the Aung San Party has swung, the National League Democracy came to power, there was a protest saying that the Chinese projects have an environmental impact. So they wants to. So the government, what the outgoing government under Thein Sein has themselves cancelled the agreement. And Chinese were deliberately looking for other option because they want to get hold of Myanmar. Because if you think why they are doing Gatherboard, why they are doing a Sidway in Myanmar is that other than the Malacca strike, because if something happens to Malacca strike, they need to take the trade. So from the Indian Ocean or Indo-Pacific, the ship can come to Myanmar border, because if Myanmar is close, from there they can take it through the land road. From Pakistan, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CEPAC, if comes through, they no need to go through Malacca. They will come to Gwadar in Pakistan. From there, the Chinese goods can go from Gwadar to the Chinese territory. With the protection of the Pakistani or the Myanmaris or whatever. So these are alternative route for them instead of depending on the Malacca Strait or South China Sea. So in that context, these projects will be helpful. So when the dam was cancelled, they started giving laptops to the university professors, the university, Yangon University, Mandalay University, the laptop nicely packed with a label saying that a gift from the Chinese embassy. In a way, they want to win the public, the minds, and instead of going against the Chinese, they want people to support the government if they have taken a project. So these are the other ways the Chinese are doing it. And also this economic corridor concept they have been proposing. China, Pakistan, the economic corridor, Myanmar, China economic corridor. Now they also proposed the China, Nepal economic corridor. They also indicated that India can join it. India and Nepal and China economic corridor. But India said India is silent. We have not publicly stated, but whatever comes from China, we don't agree or we don't take it. As I said, there is a trust deficit, and we are doesn't want Chinese men and material to come and sit here. So, but they are also developing a military bases, whether Hainan Island in the South China Sea, Woody Island. They also went to Africa, Djibouti. They have been developing as a military base. So the military bases is also coming. Some Western scholars have written this as the string of pearl strategy. So if you see this, clearly there is a pattern. One, they want to control the region. They want to be superpower in the Indo-Pacific. They want to control the trade, sea lane of communication. They also want to have projects from the all the countries, because the 1.5 billion or 6 billion, what they can do, how much manufacturing you can start, how much work you can give. Still, there will be surplus men and material. So you need to find the men to work somewhere, the companies to get revenue somewhere. So these offshore projects were in other countries taking up a project will help them, the Chinese companies and men to go and work instead of being simply sitting in it. If they don't get a job, they will go against government. Poverty will be more. So they have to engage. So this type of works will help them. Under the project, they also brought out a concept called the Road and Belt Initiative, Belt and Road Initiative (BRI), or One Belt One Road, which they also have two components. One is taking the land road to Europe. Another one is through sea route up to the Greece in Europe, and then extend to the Latin America, where the Chinese commodities products can pass through, and then Chinese can use this also for the naval activities. So these are the cause of concern for all the countries. And what is challenging today to all the countries is that China doesn't respect any international law, regional law, conventions, any the agreements. Even on the India-China border in the Galwan, there is a what you call mutual agreement. Earlier, they say Indian government is saying Chinese doesn't respect that. Chinese aggression happened because of that. The face off happened. This conflict has happened. So China doesn't bother about any rules and regulation law. Even the internation, the Convention of Law of Sea, UNCLOS or UNCLOS, China has brought their own national legislation, their national law, which says we don't bother about it. This water, the Chinese water, the inland water or the waters in South China Sea, where Chinese will have authority. Even the other countries like superpower, if they want to enter, they have to take permission from us. So they have their own internal law contradicting the international one, and they say our national law is superior. We don't bother about the international law. So this is the challenge. And also they don't like to agree or doesn't bother about respecting the rule-based order. That even if US is a superpower, certain points, certain things they don't alterate. For example, the sea line of communication, the trade. They position themselves by having certain military base, certain the naval vessels or fleets can be there. can pass through, but they don't control, saying that I'm the boss, you need to take permission. But the Chinese is doing that. And China has today technologically, super militarily, very high profile the weapons and armaments with them. They're not matching the US in terms of the firepower, but they're very close to US. That's why the US also not doesn't want to take head to head with the China. They doesn't want the confrontation conflict and want to have some type of understanding in China, because they also, for example, the Chinese have a Type 93 nuclear submarine. They have an indigenous Type 39 Chong submarine, and then the Type 35 Ming class submarine. These are very capable. They can even take up any power, including US, within a minute, and they can destroy it. So the destruction from the Chinese firepower can be extensive for all the countries who want to involve in the conflict. And they also have the anti-ship ballistic missile, TF-21 and 41. They have intercontinental ballistic missile, which can go beyond the US. And they also have a capability today to destroy a satellite. If it's launched by India or any country, they can destroy it. They can even dismantle and destroy the what you call International Space Station, what is there. So they have the laser technology, they have the laser, they can destroy the satellites. So they have the capability today. And if you see that, just a minute. If you see that, Chinese is not suddenly became a superpower in terms of technology, economically, or militarily. It's been for last 50, 60 years. The thinking is there. They have been doing silently. For example, you may be amazed to know that today on the battery related, or the what you call rare earth elements, which is used for hybrid cars or LEDs or mobiles, or many places now the rare earth elements are used. Today they are the dominant, not even US. All the material and mines are under their control. How they become it? In 50s and 60s itself, they decided that the future will be on the rare earth elements. They acquired a mine in the US in 1960, a rare earth mine in California. They sent the Chinese men to the MIT, Harvard, all the best university. Chinese government sent that man to giving a scholarship, saying that you go abroad, study. When they study, they come with the knowledge, and then they also put them to work, and then they get a work experience. When they have a work experience, the Chinese, when they give a scholarship, they also make condition the Chinese will come back to their own country. Chinese come with the knowledge and the technical expertise. Chinese also brought the material. For example, in the California rare earth the mine, they have all took the rare earths and they transported to China. US, when they saw that the depleting, the going down of the rare earth element, they find that it's difficult to operate the mine, they close the mine. But it's like, I'm just giving an example how the Chinese, the think tanks or the Chinese minds works. So there are the elements are being. All the universities and the language, even in India, if the Chinese are coming, it's been part of their propaganda or part of their effort to understand with the Chinese money, scholarship. So Chinese have done that. Two, Chinese have sent to Russia to get the military training, military technology, working with the Russians. So when they came back, when the Russia was, for Soviet Union reduced to Russia, China utilized that knowledge, technical knowledge, to develop it. And they became an expert, they became what you call a dominant power in terms of military. And economically, as I said, they've been diversifying. Their mindset or strategy is to have a small, even the mosquito bat. Which country is producing? Not even India. The mosquito bat which we have to kill the mosquito is being from China, 40 rupees or 50 rupees. Why can't other country manufacture? If you ask the governments or the private agency, manufacturing will cost, if it's 100 rupees, importing from China is only 50 rupees for us. So it's a benefit. So that is the strategy of Chinese, to make you to buy so that the economic GDP is growing. And as I said, on the military and then technology, they get the expertise on military from Russia, from China, from the US on the other thing. And now they are dominating the technology ways of the other countries. So there is a 50, 60 years of the dominance, the strategy of dominance. And in this context, I want to say that the Xi Jinping, who's the Chinese president now, he has introduced a word called Chinese dream. What is Chinese dream? The Chinese dream is that in 2049, that 2049 the year is going, which is going to come, that is the time, the century, the 100 years of celebration of the China existence coming to as a communist country. When the centenary celebration happens in 2049, as per the Chinese team, what he says, they want to have all the places what historically under the, now they should have it. Whether it is a Galvan Valley in Ladakh or in the Tawang or in the other region, South China Sea. In 2040, they want to have all the territory back to them. Two, they want to be a superpower. Three, they want to be a maritime power. That's why the Silk Route concept and others. And four, everyone should recognize that China is the superpower in the world, not US. And that is the Chinese dream which he has. And they are moving towards it. Earlier, the President Deng and others have an argument saying that we need to buy time. We should not so aggressive. We should not engage others. We should equip ourselves to become a dominant. Then we should show to the world. So the Xi Jinping believes that now they have equipped themselves, they have come to the stage to show to the world that they are the dominant player. So that's a Chinese dream, and he's moving towards it. That's why the COVID-19, when you talk about the COVID-19 and the world order, a new international world order, or global order, whatever, this COVID pandemic or the pandemic has brought out the existing the fault line, which has been deepening between US and China and the other regional powers, is brought to the surface again. Whether it's going to completely alter the international world order or it is just a time being, time needs to be answered, and the best thing is time will answer it. But Chinese are moving towards it, and this pandemic has brought to the clear to the forefront that this Indo-Pacific is going to be number one theater of conflict, because not only between two countries like India, China, or between one the Iraq and Saudi Arabia, something like that. It is going to have multiple players in the region. Even the Russia is not a power in the region, has an interest. European Union wants to play a role. So these are the things are more important to understand. It's going to be a theater of conflict. ASEAN is going to be divided. The unity of ASEAN is not in sight. The national interest and perspectives differs from one country to another. So they are not going to come together. There will be more proxy players. So the countries who are smaller power will take advantage. For example, Sri Lanka, when President Rajapaksa was in power, we have helped them with this intelligence against LTT. We have given certain equipments, but in spite of that, in the war, they know that without India's support, they could not have eliminated LTT, defeated LTT. But they went to China. Because small powers always utilize their strategic position to get benefit, whether A or B doesn't matter. They want a benefit. If you give it today at 10 rupees, they will expect 20 rupees. If you're not able to give, they'll say, I will go to someone else. So that is the small power strategy to benefit from the power rivalries of the superpowers. So whether it's between India, China, or US, China, these small powers always play this card. So this is going to continue. And what is India's interest? Because we are talking from the India, we need to understand what is India's in this region. India doesn't want to take China. As US, I said, they don't want to have direct confrontation with China. That is very clear. But if there is a need to have a confrontation, we will go with the confrontation, but it will be very limited. For example, in Galvan, only in Galvan, like a Kargil war. It is not an entire, the line of control has happened, only in Kargil sector. So in India, China also, it can be a limited war. A particular sector war can happen or conflict can happen, but not an entire India and China going. That is not going to happen. Even in the US case also, US and China doesn't want to go for a war. What China will do is they'll use North Korea to go against war against US. And US is trying to do same thing using South Korea to counter it. So this can happen frequently in future. So India's interest is to safeguard the territorial water, protect the freedom of navigation, safety and security of sea lane of communication. Because for us, 40% of trade also comes through this. And when we are saying that we are a superpower, we aim for a permanent membership in the United Nations, we need to have a certain holding, a control. Even the control which are not in the strategy, Chinese, what they're doing, at least we need to have a free flow of the trade and the communication. So that is what they want. Beyond that, what they do, India's mindset is that we don't believe beyond Malacca Strait. That is, Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea are more the, what you call the primary interest area. Beyond Malacca Strait, South China Sea, even if there's a conflict, you have seen the statement from Minister of External Affairs. We are concerned about it, but it's not our turf. Turf in the sense, not our area to concern. But we are interested to know, we're observing it, that's it. But if you are a superpower, you need to go beyond Malacca Strait up to the West Pacific. That is what, as a scholars like us, advocate always. With a limited capacity, but the smaller countries are ready to partner with you. Why don't you take it up? Vietnam is eagerly waiting. And also said, please, help us to modernize our military, help us to have a missile power. They also asked the BrahMos missile from us. We said we will promise we will give, but we did not. So we generally have a defensive strategy instead of offensive strategy. Yeah, offensive not a sense go and hit someone. I'm saying proactive in the sense to take proactive role in engaging the neighbors to help them. But the problem, if you talk to the policymaker, they said we don't have financial backing. For example, when you give some material or equipment or training, if you give 100 scholarship to the ASEAN, they ask for 500 scholarship. Where will you go? We ourselves are developing now, only expecting the aid from the other countries like US or sometimes the military related from Russia or the World Bank to support our infrastructure project from the Japan International Japan Cooperation of International Agency like that. So there is a mindset that we need to equip and then to wait for some more time. That's the India strategy. So in this context of COVID-19 pandemic, the division is going to exist between West and China, also going to exist between the other neighbors, literal China and China. The grouping of Quad, the quadrilateral agreement which happened between the US, US, India, Australia, Japan, and that is in the namesake it is existing because other than US and Australia to extent, other powers like India are not interested in openly saying that this agreement partnership is aimed against China. Another the lacuna in this Quad is that if you don't take countries like Vietnam or South Korea or Indonesia, who are the other players in the region, this Quad is not going to succeed. So you need to have a regional power from the Southeast Asia to be a credible partner in supporting your missions. So that is important, that's not happening. Both India and China have taken up a medical diplomacy during this COVID time. India sent the medicines and the supplies to the other countries in the region. China has been doing vigorously also. So the medical diplomacy between two countries also, in order to increase the soft power, they have been doing it. China is doing because the world is being concerned about the origin of virus, from where it comes. So they want to divert the attention from themselves, that all the questions come to them, they want to divert. So they want to play a medical diplomacy by sending the aid. Also, one of the reasons they the rights of saying that what is happening in Hong Kong or in the Taiwan, also in the India-China border, is in a way China wants to divert the international media attention from their own handling of the COVID-19. So they want media to forget about the COVID-19 issue. They want the focus on something else, because also the United Nations or WHO, where the World Health Organization, Australia has moved to the idea of having an independent inquiry on the origin of the virus and the China's handling. Because of that, only today China has having a war with Australia, or trade war, I'm saying, the trade tariff and then the stoppage of exports and imports. So China wants to completely diversify the focus from their dealing. The economic slowdown is also a cause of concern, because most of the countries who are depending on the economic growth, for example, India has economic growth of 6.6, but our GDP is around 3 to 4 trillion. But the Chinese, the GDP is also, the GDP growth is equal to us, around 6.5 to 6.6. But the GDP is around 13 trillion. But all the smaller countries or including India, if because of COVID-19, next 1 year the economic growth can drop. If the economic growth can drop, the supporting the military or the defense budget will go down. And because of the defense budget can go down, the capability of the countries in equipping the naval or the air force or the military is the question. If that's a thing, China, which is already having a dominance in terms of military and economy, can utilize this and try to poke in order to make you to be a submissive, understand and agree with them. So this COVID-19 has caused this concern, but the economic the slowdown is impacting the defense expenditure and then the modernization. More importantly, the last segment I want to cover is that Donald Trump, though he's been very showing hawkish or sometimes aggressive posture through Twitter, to the Chinese, he doesn't bother. What he's doing is he, as a right-wing person, whenever the leader emerges from the right-wing parties, he talks about the nationalism and he talks more of threatening others. But internally, what you see, he's focusing on the internal domestic population for getting vote. The election is going to happen in November later this year, and the US the policy or the direction which comes, it's clearly showing that he is looking inward towards America first. Make America great again, or make America great. So if you say great, make America great again or great, you agree that America is not great right now. That is argument, counter arguments you can hear. That means you are agreeing that China is the dominant player. So this type of what do you call the argument is being advocated by the scholars. So US needs to be clearly come to an understanding what they want to do in the region, how they are going to play an important role, whether they are going to build a confidence among the powers in the region, whether they are going to commit to the alliance system what they have with the South Korea, Japan, Australia, and say that we will guarantee your security. Whatever happens, we will come and stand with you. That commitment, whether they're going to give, it's important. And the third is that are the country like India going to take responsibility? I said that the security provider of the region, what the Southeast Asian countries believe, India can shoulder the responsibility that it's a security guarantee that the trade route, sea lane of communication, choke points can be guaranteed by the India because India has a good naval power. India has known outside as not a power who's interested in grabbing the territory. India is having the soft power diplomacy with the Indian diaspora in the region. India's goodwill, the relationship generally with the Ashoka time or with the Chola empires who had a trade and then the links with this country, but never occupied it. With a certain time they have left and came back. They always believe that India has a capability and can shoulder the responsibility. The question is whether India can do it. As far as my understanding from the security establishment or from the policy making establishment, they are not ready to take it up. And they are not even ready to give the technology like BrahMos to Vietnam because they believe that if we give to BrahMos like technology, other countries will ask. And what is the guarantee that tomorrow it can be used against us? For example, Sri Lanka case also, when Sri Lankan government asked, we gave Indra radar during the 2006 to 2009 war, final phase Vietnam war. We are given small equipment like Indra radar and others. They asked for much more. We said, what is the guarantee tomorrow Sri Lanka cannot use it against us? Because all the smaller countries always play anti-India card. Because India has the doubt of equipping the neighbors of the country, so I'm not doubtful. I'm doubtful about it. And the question of the ASEAN centrality, whether ASEAN can come together, doubtful. So without ASEAN centrality, without the ASEAN support, having a clear policy to take China is doubt. So with this, I will stop here, and if there's any question, I'll be happy to take it up. Thank you very much. I appreciate for the opportunity.
I request participants to ask questions through chat box to our resource person.
Hello, sir.
Sivanesan, you
There is
just
a question from Pravik Mehti. Is there any kind of influence by China in Nepal's drive to include some of the Indian territories in its map? And how can India respond to this move by Nepal as the tensions in Kalwan Valley has overshadowed this aspect?
I'll take a couple of questions and answer one by one. I can take
Okay.
another 2 or 3, so then we can go with the answers.
Okay, sir. And question from Dr. K. Sendil Kumar, is China intends to occupy the position of USA? This is one question from Sendil Kumar.
Another question?
select few more, Sivanesan.
Okay.
Select few more, Sivanesan.
Okay. There is a question from Gulab Bir Rahmani. What is the strategy of China and India in Afghanistan?
All right, I'll answer this and then we'll take another couple of questions later.
Okay, okay.
All right, the first question is China behind the Nepal's taking up a hardline position against India on the border issue? There is no clear answer or any indication to say that yes, China is behind, but indirectly there are certain trends out there which we can connect and say China could be there. But on the Kalapani or in the Lipoki, the pass, which we have today the confrontation with the contestation with the Nepal. It is historically we have been this. It's not the new something comes up. Only difference is today the government, the Prime Minister Poli Sharma, has taken hardline position. They brought out the amendment. They brought out a new map. It is because the who's in power today, it's a Nepal Communist Party. Any Communist party in the world, they always align with Russia or China. It's known position. So when the Nepal Congress Party, Koirala's government was there, they also had a problem with India on the border issue, but it was taken up diplomatically, mutually. But the Communist parties, when they're in power, they want to go with China. It is clear why I'm saying the Chinese ambassador in Kathmandu was also part of the Chinese intelligence community earlier. And she has given a statement, for example, on the Chinese, for the Nepalese media coverage on China. She said Nepali media should avoid covering the Chinese incidents or events. So the Nepali media said that it is interfering in their freedom of press and internal matter. Two, when there is a power formation, there is a problem in having a government formation among the communist parties in Nepal. The Chinese ambassador who have arranged for a meeting among all the Nepali communist parties, small parties, bring together to form a government. So these are the small points to point out that China could be behind it, but there is no clear straight away indication. We cannot blame them directly, but there are possibilities are there. That's the first one. Second one, whether China has the intention of occupying the position of US. Yes, I said China wants to be a global superpower by 2014. That is the Chinese dream. They have it. They have intention to it, and they're working towards it. The third is India's strategy in Afghanistan. India's strategy in Afghanistan to see a peace and stability in the region, to have India's presence, because for China is using Pakistan against India as a proxy. To counter Pakistan, we need to have a base beyond Pakistan. So Iran is far away and Iraq is far away. We can have in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, we are only working on the development projects. We are equipping the soft power. We are equipping the school teachers and then training of other officials, police and others. So our strategy is to first get hold on Afghanistan, to build a rapport image for India, and to work on the soft power right now, and to see later what we can do in future. Because presence in Afghanistan will help having a intelligence and surveillance against Pakistan from the other side of the border. Other 3 or 4 questions, set of questions I can take. You're going to take the question and put it to me, or I need to go and see the chat box myself? Where there are many questions are there, I don't know which to take. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Now you can ask me, you could give me the next set of questions.
Okay, sir. How Indo-China conflicts influence Indo-Russia relation, as we know that China is trying to pressurize Russia to not to sell weapons in India, and Russia has good relation with both the country. What would be the role of Russia in Indo-China conflicts? This is a question from Anjali Seth, sir. And
Yes, please.
a question from Dr. P.G. Kulkarni. America is targeting China, and in turn, China is blaming America. In this context, is India a natural balancer in Indo-Pacific geopolitics?
Okay, next one.
A question from Gulab Mir Rahmani. Do you think that after post-COVID-19, political situation will change, particularly in region or not? This is a question from Gulab Mir Rahmani.
All right, so I'll take all these 3 questions right now, then we'll
Okay,
go.
sir.
Russia's role in India-China conflict, whether it is going to change. 2 or 3 years back, when we have the confrontation, the Balakot attack from the Pakistan, the same question came, because at that time Russia planned a bilateral military exercise in the POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. That is first time Russia came to Pakistan and said, we are ready to have a joint military exercise. All the countries will have military exercise. India has many. So first time. So immediately the Indian diplomats have reached out to Russia. We have a confrontation with Pakistan. How can you do it? It is not came in media. It never was in the popular discussion in TVs. But since I was in Moscow that time for another meeting, indirectly I came to understand this thing. When we reached out, what Russians have told us is that when you are going close to US, why not we go close with Pakistan? So that's a message they gave. Russia is clearly unhappy with India having a very good relation with US. Not a normal relation, it's a strategic partnership we have. From this relation is going up. So Russia is not happy about it. But what we have communicated to Russia is that this India's alliance with the, not alliance, we don't call as alliance, a partnership, a strategic partnership given. It's not against you, that is Russia. It is for the benefit of us. We need to have a nuclear material for running the reactor, so we need to go. That's why the 123 agreement. Today, we have a threat from the China and the proxy like Pakistan. And since yourself is been struggling with the economic growth, and you are more interested in the Central Asia, in the capture, the Crimea issues. So we need to have a player who can support our the modernization of military, guarantee our international presence in the United Nations. So we have communicated that it is not against you. We can understand your position, your concern, but it is not against you. So we have and we have confident of them. On China, Russia doesn't have any option. One, as a communist in the Arctic Sea. If I want to talk about the Arctic Sea, it's an interesting topic. We'll take another session on it. Because today we are talking about Indo-Pacific. Arctic is melting, ice is melting. In 30-40 years, with the ice is melting with 30-40% or 50% of melting of the ice, the best trade route, sea route or sea line of communication will be not Indian Ocean or Pacific, it will be the Arctic. When you see the globe, when the Arctic is here, that's the shortest route for trading. From one end to another one, if it is takes 10 days for the Indian Ocean to cross the ship, it will take only 5 days. So the Arctic Ocean is going to emerge as a strategic ocean for the shipping line of communication or the sea route. So the Arctic Ocean is important. So China has an eye on having its share on the Arctic Ocean. So Russia as a dominant player there, if they don't want China to come, what they're doing is they're engaging China. Which if you don't engage China, China has much more power than the Russia today. And China can pose a threat to Russia. So instead of posing a threat to Russia, having a threat from China, they're having a relation, but they're not committed on India. On India, China, Russia never said they will go against India. Even today, Russia says that they will be either supporting India or they will be neutral. They're not going to go against them. If you have read somewhere in the newspaper, India has contributed 1 billion or I think 1 billion to Russia as aid. So far, India was receiving aid from Russia. Why suddenly we have given aid to Russia? It is because that time only, if you see the Prime Minister Modi went to Russia and came back, or he was there, we have asked Russia, we are also interested in Arctic, because if Arctic is going to be an important sea route, we need to have, but we are not a power there, so we need support of Russia. So this 1 billion is to tell to Russia, we will support you, not even like China, but we want also to be, even if not a player, whatever partner, as observer in the Arctic Ocean. So that is the point. So Russia is not going to take any position. On India-China problem, Russia is neutral as of now. US said they will mediate, but we are very clear. We will not take any mediation on any territory, whether it is Pakistan or with China. We will deal with the country bilaterally. We will not go with any third-party mediation, whether it's Russia or any country. We will not do it. But if I say no third party, but indirect negotiations can happen. In a way, we'll reach to the Russia or we'll reach to US. Can you put a word? So that is happening there. It's called backdoor diplomacy. It's happening there, but not direct player who sit with us in the table and discuss, come, okay, let's have a discussion. What is your point? What is your point? And then that moderation will not happen. India is a natural balancer in the Indo-Pacific. As of now, we are not. We want to be it, but we know that we have a lacuna. We don't have a capability. We have a limitation in terms of economy, in terms of military technology. In 10 to 15 years, we want to develop our military, naval power, and then we want to play. What Chinese have did so far, waited for some time, then they have come out with the dream. So we want to do certain things there, similar things there in the Indo-Pacific. But the scholars like me and many others have been pointing out that it is not, you need to buy time to get yourself equipped. You always can project yourself saying that we are not interested in any conflict, we are not going to take any territory, but we will guarantee, we will stand with any smaller country or like country like Vietnam. We will not send, but we will military troops, but we will send political message. Yes, this is injustice, we will stand for it. That proactive role India needs to take. That we have been advocating, which is not happening. So it may take some more time to happen. The third question, which in this set is that post-COVID situation is going to change. As I said, the post-COVID or COVID now has brought the fault lines, divisions much more clear what is existing already. And the only situation can change is there is a slowdown in all the countries because of the down of economic and then business. What is going to happen is going to have impact on the defense expenditure. Military expenditure. If the military is not going to have a fund for equipping themselves, then the China will utilize it. China is already utilizing it. That's why, in spite of the pandemic, they are doing aggressive posture in India. See, for example, any country or any person, at the same time, can you have a confrontation, conflict, or harm 10 people at the same time? China is doing. In South China Sea with Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, in East China Sea with Japan, with India and border. So at the same time, is doing it under the pandemic. What is clear message? That I'm a boss, you accept it. If you're not accepting, I'll keep doing. Other countries are not doing silent because they know that they don't have a capability. There's a limitation. So the situation has changed. How much modernization they can do it. If the economy is not going to grow, this is going to be a cause of concern. The next 3 or 4 questions, you can, if there's anything, I can take it up.
Okay, thank you, sir. This is the last 2 questions. One from Dr. D. Ramakrishnan. He asked, what is your opinion on the comparison between China's BRI and India's Sagarmala project? And another one is from Devi. She asked, what would be the India's foreign policy in future, since nowadays most of our neighborhood from Nepal to Sri Lanka is in conflict. So what is your view on policy making?
About India's policy making?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
India's foreign policy.
Okay. This is the two last question, right? Or is
Yes,
there
sir. Another one question is left, and Gulab Mir, he asked, USA and Taliban sign agreement draw their own forces from Afghanistan. Even now the negotiating is going on. The Taliban wants going to come in Afghanistan to share the government power of Afghanistan. What is the concern of India regarding Afghanistan situation? You don't think India will lost all their achievement in Afghanistan?
All right. So thank you again for
That's
this
it.
question. China's BRI and India's Sagarmala. It is like comparing apple with orange, or comparing something which is uncomparable, because China's BRI is a massive project from the China, starting with from the east and goes up to the Greece in Europe. They are trying to extend up in Latin America, because in Latin America they are also trying to get more the ore mines and the rare earth mines from the Latin America. So they are having a interest in plan to extend to Latin America. What is India's Sagarmala? We have only one ship went to the Oman. That's it. What else we did under the Sagarmala? We never did anything. Talking about Sagarmala or Bharatmala and Sagarmala are two projects of the Indian government under the Ministry of Shipping and the Ministry of Road Transportation. The Sagarmala wants to have a maritime infrastructure, maritime dominance. Bharatmala talks about the connectivity, hinterland connectivity, the central India or the northeast India connecting with the port of the coastal lines in the east and then the west. So that is the Bharatmala and Sagarmala. Under the India's the Silk Route, like China, we have only sent one ship to the Oman as a goodwill visit. After that, we did not do anything. So it's not comparable. We are not even 5% to Chinese on that. The reason is India has not done this is because every time, even on Quad or even on any naval exercise when we do, Chinese media or Chinese have viewed this as anti-China, India's activities as anti-China. So we always say, even in the Shanghai, the meeting, the cooperation CIO, and the ASEAN meeting in the Singapore, India has clearly stated that even the Quad is not aimed against one particular country. Why we need to say? If you are confident that you know that the threat is from China. George Fernandez, the former defense minister, told after the nuclear explosion, they asked whom is the threat. He said China is the number one threat. But even that confidence is not there to sustain and say today. What we are saying that everyone knows China is a major threat for India, but we always say it's not aimed at one country. We don't consider China as the enemy. We only say it's a challenge, a contest, but we never say it's enemy. So what we're doing is that we never point out China as an enemy or the number one challenge. And we want to have good relations with China at one side. Same time, we want to send out a message to China saying that we also are concerned about you. That's why we are joining with you. That's why we are doing this. So India is not having a clear, a concrete, a coherent strategy, a foreign policy to counter China. And we are worried because if there is a conflict tomorrow, no country is going to support India by sending a troops. What they can do is politically they will say that we support India. They can take, but if there is a more casualty, you are suffered and your nationalism will be more. For example, Pakistan, if there is Calvan like things have happened in India-Pakistan border, we could have sent our the Air Force and strike in their territory somewhere. But we will not do China because China has a much more muscle power today, a firepower. So that's a worry why we are not able to do it. So yes, the Sagarmala and BRI is not comparable. China is doing much more under the BRI. On India's foreign policy, as I said, India's foreign policy is been changing in one way, but there is also constant the what you call the promises of where we build our relations. For example, on Sri Lanka, we have told that Sri Lankans we are not in favor of war, right? We will not accept. We said Tamil's welfare is important, but after 2006, when 2005, when Mahindra Rajapaksa came to power, there's no room, there's no space for us to play. We don't want to send our troops. We don't want to be look like a hawkish, or we don't want to look like a big brother. So what we did is, okay, if you're fighting, you fight among yourself. Whoever comes winner, we'll support it. But LTD, they want us to be a mediator. We said no. The Sri Lankan government asked for equipment. We only gave small things and we left it. In the meantime, the Chinese and Pakistan came and sat down in Colombo, started giving the training to them and then support to them. So India's foreign policy is one, not proactive. Two, we are sometimes what you call wavering, not very clear what we want to do. There is no clear strategy to achieve. Third, we always talk about regional power. We want to be a global power, superpower, but we don't have in mind to project. Our projection is not there. With Pakistan or some players we do. Other players we are very different to them. We never use our power. Whether even in Maldives or Sri Lanka, Nepal, if you don't show that you are a superpower, regional power, if you're quiet and if you want to only do diplomatic measure, then what is the point of saying that I'm a superpower, regional power, and I want to be like this in 50 years of time or 20 years time? So that power projection is not there, and our image in the neighborhood is not great. One is because India has taken up many the projects, whether it's housing project in Sri Lanka, whether the Kaladan multimodal project in Myanmar, with Nepal, some of the road construction, other thing. With Bhutan, we have some the water dam and then water sharing, electricity sharing. Many projects we are not able to complete in time. So 10 years, 12 years. So they fed up. What is the government is doing? India is not committing and giving the project back to us. So that name is the image of India is not that good. Two is that decision making. Here, if there need to be a decision to come, the Prime Minister has to take. If the Prime Minister is very strong, if like Narendra Modi, if he say, I want to do it, do it, all the agency can follow. If the Prime Minister is not very strong, there's no political will, the agency will fight. For example, Kaladan multimodal project, we say that India connects with the Southeast Asian countries. So we have a road project from Northeast Manipur, Imphal to Murray, Murray to the Mandalay, Mandalay goes to Taiwan, Thailand to Malaysia, like that. We started in 2004 somewhere. Still now we have not completed it, right? So today, if they have allotted 500 crores, the finance ministry says money is not there, we cannot allot. We have committed to the other country, the finance will be cut down. Third, the material will not come, equipment will not come, with the finance is down, our work will be slowed down. In 10 years time, what we committed earlier 400 or 500 crores, now it is 1500 crores. Again, the among the ministries coordination is not there. So Prime Minister office has to come down every time and say that do it. And after that, Prime Minister is not following it. If he's following, he's focused somewhere else, this get diluted. So India's image is not good. India is not proactive. India policy making is somehow focused more on Kashmir, focused more on the territorial issue, focused more on inward in developing rather than power projection outside. This is another major issue on the foreign policy. On the US-Taliban agreement and negotiation, what is India's concern? The US, under the Donald Trump's presidency, he is thinking why US needs to take care of security of the world. Why this peace and stability should only lie with the US. Why in the peace? What we are going to get? We are spending so much money. He's calculating cost benefit from the economic point. And why we need to spend so much. Let the other country take responsibility. If they are interested in world peace, in the world he's reducing the troops. Let's have direct negotiation with them. If Taliban agrees to the if Taliban is going to give us some, but Taliban, they themselves know that Taliban has came to rise as a group is because they are the local September 11 attack. They became a threat. They brought the troops here. Now they feel that why we need to spend so much money. They're entering into the negotiation. What will happen is Taliban will come to power. They stay for 5 years. In 5 years' time, the US government will change. They will again Taliban have become stronger agencies, Islamic radicalize someone else like that. Then they will feel their heat and they will come again the troops. So this is going to be like a chicken and egg, going to happen repeatedly. What is India's concern is India wants certain powers to be a peacemakers or players. Peacekeeping should be there. They strongly believe US presence will help in stability and peace. But when US is going to withdraw, what they're doing is that they want to see whether other like-minded countries, whether even from the Islamic countries, Malaysia, Iran, Saudi, Turkey, or Russia or some other country can take the role of peacekeeping. That's why. But US is saying India needs to take the peacekeeping role and to be a guarantee. But India doesn't want to do it. One, because the Pakistan element is there. ISI has close connection with the Taliban. Tomorrow, this can be a confrontation on the other side where we lose many more soldiers on that side. And we don't have a financial backing also. And three is that, unfortunately, like in Sri Lanka case, the IPKF, Indian Peacekeeping Force, sent for the peacekeeping purpose, but it got in a different connotation when they tried to impose the peace. The locals who invited India gone against India. So this can happen in Afghanistan also. So we don't want to do it. We want to see the peace and stability. We want to have our presence. So that's very clear from the India side.
Thank you, sir. Thanks.
I think we can wind up the session now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mail Waganen, for presenting a wonderful critical analysis of Indo-Pacific geopolitics. Rightly, you said that neither USA is dependable nor communist China. We can't depend on both. I remember, Kautilya, long back, Kautilya has said that we should go for natural allies. So USA is also not our natural ally, and also China is also not natural ally. So unfortunately, we find India at present, what I feel, in a difficult situation. That if we confront China through war, who is going to help us? We are not sure about it. We have to depend on ourselves, on our capacity. And also, I should thank all the participants for making this session very useful through asking very fruitful questions. And I thank Mail Waganen sir for spending a lot of time with us, answering patiently to all the questions. Though there are so many questions, but because we have a time limit, we have to follow that. So we could not take up all the questions. Sorry about that. Once again, I thank everyone, and let us meet for the afternoon session at 2:30. Please be there sharply, just 10 minutes before, to attend the afternoon session. Once again, thanks everyone.
Thank you to Dr. Neelam for the chairing, and then Dr. C. Subramanian for the invitation once again. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks.
Then end it.